everyone. Welcome to the Daily Grind. My name is Kelly Johnson, your fun and friendly host. We are in episode 16 of season 2, the very best one yet.
Support from this podcast comes from Savvy Dating Game. Tired of swiping left and right? Try Savvy, the world's first live mobile dating game. Live every night, 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern.
So we're going to start off right away before we go live with our special guest of the day. Here is our fast fact. A chef's toque contains 100 folds. Most diners, or when you go to a restaurant, are busy looking at their what's on their plate in front of them versus what the preparer is actually wearing. But the toque, the traditional hat worn by chefs, actually contains 100 folds. And this nice round number actually represents the number of ways to cook an egg, surprisingly. So there's your fun fact of the day. I'm going to keep the introduction short today. Adamantia Velonis is the founder of Marmalade and Kindness. Marmalade and Kindness encourages you to find moments of mindfulness and creativity through cooking. Adamantia lives and works in London, UK, so welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for coming on to the Daily Grind. I'm excited to learn more about your story and share your story with our listeners out there in the world. So I guess first and foremost, can you tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Absolutely. So as you introduced me, I'm Ada Velonis. I was born and bred in Melbourne, Australia, as you can probably tell from my voice. So I'm an Aussie now living on the other side of the pond in the UK. And I am the proud founder of Marmalade and Kindness, which is a mindful cooking journal. So yeah, my mission is really to just encourage people to find moments of mindfulness and creativity through cooking.
Wonderful. That's a really great story. You're very inspiring out there in the world. Listeners, Marmalade and Kindness is a really great resource, and I'm excited to talk more about it and all the goodies and whatnot. What's the best is yet to come and things of that nature in our interview today. So I guess firstly, how did you become interested in cooking, Ada?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I think my interest in food definitely started with my grandmother. I have a Greek background, and I don't know, I think I'm just so lucky to have these memories of her making food from scratch. And, she'd often make, the phyllo pies, the pastries. And I'd, watch her as a little girl rolling out these, sheets of pastry, and they'd become, paper thin. And I think just all the sounds and sort of memories of that whole process, and sort of, slapping the dough against, the marble, and just, that sort of stereotypical sort of nonna, or ya, as it is in Greek, kind of, kneading the bread. And when I was a little girl, I was a bit of a spectator, and would just sort of help her by throwing the flour onto her hands so the dough wouldn't stick. And I think all those memories, they just kind of live in us. So I think, food and home cooking, it's always just sort of been a part of me, I think. And I mean, I must say there was a period of my life when I was studying quite intensely and working quite a demanding job as a lawyer. And some of that, I feel I had lost my connection to cooking and to some of those, fundamentals, really. And yeah, it wasn't actually until I moved over to the UK to be with my partner that, cooking started to become part of my life again.
That's wonderful. Again, we've seen similar stories with our guests on the show in regards to not in the cooking realm, but coming looking back at experience that they had at a younger age, and
Yeah.
developing that passion and what they enjoy and what they do actually now in their own daily grind. So I really enjoy your story on cooking, how you got involved with your grandmother. Did you take any lessons, or are you self-taught? You mentioned you watch your grandmother in the kitchen to help improve that skill, and now you create different recipes and
Yeah, yeah.
share your knowledge.
Yeah, so I'm definitely self-taught. Sadly, my grandmother didn't teach me how to cook before she passed away. So a lot of these memories have kind of been brought back through the process of cooking. And part of, I think, my whole sort of origin story, I suppose, with Marmalade and Kindness is this memory I have of moving to the UK, and I was spending quite a lot of time by myself actually at the start of the move. And I was just sort of feeling a bit lonely and sort of pottering around in the kitchen. I took out Vefa's sort of Greek cookbook. So this is like the Bible on Greek cooking, pretty much. And I was sort of flipping through the pages, and all of a sudden, this little piece of paper like fell out, and I realized it was actually my grandmother's recipe for kourabiedes, which is a traditional Greek biscuit. And I was sort of so overcome by just finding this and sort of seeing her handwriting and going through this whole process of trying to recreate these recipes, even though I hadn't been taught. So as I say, when you're little, even though you're there observing it is almost like you're carrying all this information and this knowledge still in you. And I sort of found by sort of smelling some of those recipes again as I was making them, all of that memory became sort of activated again. And scientifically, it's called sort of your involuntary memory, and it relates to this sort of ancient sense of smell. So it's been researched that through cooking, actually, you can access some of these deeper memories. So yeah, it was quite interesting. But yeah, definitely self-taught home cooking. I'm inspired by British produce. I'm a Greek Australian cooking, some Greek recipes, other recipes that are inspired by our trips across Europe. So it's all a bit of a mix. But I quite like that. I quite like that it kind of throws authenticity on its head a little bit.
Yes, I was just going to say it makes you really unique and stand out across all the different chefs or people that bake or cook in the industry. It really tells that story, and I like hearing it. I know our listeners will too. Just, the different background and self-taught, that's incredible. It takes a lot of hard work and effort to get where you are today. So really excited to learn more about that story with Marmalade and Kindness. But before we go into that, can you tell us about your transition from moving from Australia to now to the UK?
Yeah. It's been an amazing adventure. I mean, 18 months ago, I moved across, and my partner had actually come over to the UK first for work. So we had done about 12 months of long distance, which was so difficult. I had obviously made trips across to see him during that time, but it was still really hard. So by the time we actually got to live with each other again, it was just amazing. And we both love London. I mean, we're both foodies, so I mean, just weekends at the Borough Market, if any of the listeners have been there, is just incredible. So buying gooseberries in summer, and Cornish potatoes, and eating cheddar from cheddar. So as an Australian, that is just such an awesome experience. And we just fell in love with all of it. And we're cooking on the weekend and experimenting. And Andrew would just always be saying, "Oh, I wish we could share this with our family." And we'd be sending photos and stuff like that. But actually, we were doing so much recipe development in the background. So yeah, I mean, coming across from Melbourne, Australia, there was this part of it which was just so exciting and fabulous, really. But at the same time, it was really hard. I mean, there was it's a long way away. Australia really is quite far away, and I had lived that far from my family and friends before. So London is a very welcoming place. At least I found that. But it was still a period of adjustment, and I definitely found that cooking became my outlet during that time, and gave me some purpose and a bit of sense of sort of control and mastery, because you can sort of sit there and like keep improving on your skills. And as I kind of mentioned before, I was spending a lot of time by myself during the day, because I was still working Australian hours for the company I was with, and Andrew was at work doing normal hours. So it was a bit isolating, but it was just, I think cooking, it gives us this opportunity to really kind of work with our hands and be in the moment. And I found like I could get into this space of flow and focus so quickly. And it just became almost like a meditation, and a way to deal with some of those distracting thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, really well said. Yep, that's a big transition. Just moving to another city or another country or just to a new place in general. Just be able to, stick with that passion. We've had a couple different guests on our show, including like Rob Mass, just talking about the transition from moving to another big city within the U.S. or even regards to your own daily grind. You mentioned use cooking to, kind of help keep that structure or, that familiarity in your schedule. Gavin Jove mentioned to just finding what works best.
Yeah.
The flow of it, being comfortable, again, control the controllables and master your skills. And now here we are today talking to you in London, which is great. So going back to the kitchen, I guess. What was your aha moment then in starting Marmalade and Kindness?
So, it's so funny. The aha moment, I think, has been so many different moments that have kind of come together. And it's almost the way, isn't it? You kind of do all these little bits and pieces and you kind of think, oh, how does all of this fit into a plan? And then somehow it kind of just happens. Yeah. So it was, as I say, we were cooking a lot on the weekend. We were, working with a lot of different recipes, a lot of different produce. So, cooking was kind of always there in the background. And then it wasn't really until probably some months later. So I moved in March and then probably around October when I was in Athens with my mom and we were just on a holiday together. And I don't know what it was about this trip, but I don't know. I was just really thinking about what I wanted to contribute to the world. And I know it sounds sort of like a bit of a big question, but it was sort of like, we all have a gift or a talent or something that we can offer, that might help or inspire other people. And I sort of thought, well, what is that for me? What does that look like? And I was sort of reflecting on, mindful cooking and, the benefits it had for me. And it just sort of came together, this sort of whole idea of writing and, my love of writing, cooking, self-development. And yeah, Marmalade and Kindness was kind of just born. I thought, well, this would be an amazing way to sort of share this adventure in the UK with like our family and friends, but also just inspire other people to explore, this whole process of mindful cooking. And, when I sort of say about serendipity, it's so funny because when it came to actually naming it, this phrase marmalade and kindness kind of just kept coming back to me. And actually, it's based off a poem I wrote, which is inspired by sort of love and aging and sort of the simple life and being in an English garden and kind of just appreciating, really just the basics. And the phrase, as I just kind of kept coming back, and I was like, you know what, actually, this has to be the name. And now, kind of looking back on it, I kind of think, marmalade, it's just so perfect because it kind of brings together the whole Greek tradition around, preserving things and, making these, they're called spoon desserts, but basically they're like very, very sweet marmalades that you have like just one spoonful at a time. And that kind of warmth and love that, you bring to cooking, the whole cooking process. So kindness, I think, really does capture that, intention or that attitude that, you bring to the kitchen when you're preparing and, sharing something with love.
Really well said, Ada, with just, marmalade, the recipes, tying it in, again, really the originality behind it, telling your own story, again, sharing that your knowledge in the kitchen with others is really important. So, yeah, can you tell us more about Marmalade and Kindness, like just more deep down, like how can listeners, get involved, check out recipes, interact?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, as I say, Marmalade and Kindness, I really, really want to inspire people to just explore creativity and also the life lessons, I think, that can be sort of shown to us when we use the cooking process as a bit of a, informal kind of mindfulness practice. And I mean, personally, I find that just being able to focus on something for an hour, even if it is just a simple pasta sauce, that you've made 100 times before, but like being in the moment and applying some of those attitudes of mindfulness to the process can really release our minds from all of that mental chatter. And I think there is something so beautiful about reclaiming that opportunity to use our hands and really make something from scratch again, particularly when as a sort of a city dweller, I do think we lose a lot of our sort of skills really in our everyday lives. It's not like we're often, growing food from scratch as we were in the past. So it is a really beautiful opportunity to reclaim some of that. So I find that just that focus lets me have a bit of time for self care and a bit of time for reflection. So on the website, you'll find a collection of recipes. They are inspired by beautiful British seasonal produce. A big part of the website is really focusing on organic produce and eating with the seasons. Some of the recipes are inspired by Greek cooking, but also memories of other places and trips, and just being in Europe, also Australian cooking. So it really is a mix. There's a bit of sort of everything for everyone. There's also vegan recipes on there too. So what I find, well, at least what I think makes Marmalade and Kindness a little bit special is the fact at the bottom of every recipe there's actually a practice makes progress tip, and the tip it matches the cooking length of the recipe. So if it's a shorter recipe, the tip might be around focusing on the preparation and bringing some of that awareness to the ingredients that you're using. While some of the longer recipes, while you're sort of sitting around waiting for something to bake, I might share a quote and a thought, something to contemplate. And it was really important for me, I think, to include this whole philosophy around practice makes progress just throughout the whole project. Because I often find that with people, they're a little bit hesitant about giving something a go, particularly if it looks a little bit complicated or they haven't made it before. It's sort of like, oh, what if it goes wrong? And what if it doesn't work out? What if I've got, nothing to eat for dinner? And, so I think that whole idea of, it's not about sometimes being perfect, and not every meal is going to be crazy amazing, but it's actually the process and those sort of incremental gains, kind of improving, and as I was saying, developing a little bit of that mastery over time and just really enjoying the process as opposed to kind of reaching for a particular outcome. Yeah.
Yeah, really well said. I really enjoy too on Marmalade and Kindness the variety of recipes, and me as someone who enjoys traveling as well, just being able to basically make one of the recipes and experience, going to that city or traveling to that area in a sense during this time too as well with limited travel. I really enjoy too the practice makes progress that you have included on each recipe as well. Like you mentioned, I think it helps people motivate them, inspire them to achieve their goals as well in and outside the kitchen. I think is really important. It ties your whole story together. And it really creates that positive mindset and being able to self reflect or make progress throughout their time in the kitchen or what they're working on in their own daily grind. So really important things. With all that success that you're having right now, can you share like a recent success story, maybe with one of your one of the consumers or bakers, chefs out there that has came across your channel? You don't have to mention names, but if you want to share one with us on the daily grind, that'd be great.
Yeah. Success. Look, I think what's been really interesting over the last couple of months, particularly with COVID is the focus and sort of, I suppose, interest in a lot of the vegan recipes. So I'm not vegan, so you'll sort of see from the recipes on there. There are meat-based recipes, but I follow a vegan diet partway through the year as I follow the Greek Orthodox fasting calendar. So, like a lot of traditions, you restrict animal and dairy products during certain parts of the year. So I do that, and that's actually been the catalyst or the inspiration for a lot of the vegan and dairy-free recipes that you see on the site, and it's been just fascinating actually to see how popular vegan recipes and products have become over COVID. And there's been a lot of interest, I think, particularly in the UK. So I think Mintel recently published some new data on this, but they said something like 1 in 10 of British people have said that because of COVID, vegan diet is now more appealing to them, which is actually it's quite interesting. So I must say, with all of that in mind, I think people are becoming a little bit more interested in, okay, how can I minimize waste? How can I cook with ingredients that aren't going to go off, super quickly? So there is this desire to go, okay, well, how can I cook in a way that's going to be more friendly to the planet? So dairy-free and plant-based recipes have definitely risen in terms of how can I support my health? How can I, save money as well? So it's been quite exciting. I must say, I've had 2 articles recently featured in Vegan Food and Living UK on this topic. So yeah, definitely check them out. The links are on the website under the press section. And I mean, in terms of popular recipes, I've got to say there are 2 that have really performed really well. So one which is vegan tahini banana bread. And this one is such a joy to make. I just love, the smell of like crushed bananas and like the warm nuttiness that kind of fills the house when you're baking it from the tahini. And of course, like it's actually quite healthy. So the combination of banana and tahini makes it sort of just like full of antioxidants, lots of B vitamins, magnesium, iron, calcium. So it's really, really good for you. The other one, which is a cheeky sort of afternoon pick-me-up, is our vegan ginger and turmeric cookies. So this one I love because it's just full of so many warming spices and lots of fresh ginger, fresh turmeric, which is so great because it's anti-inflammatory. And they're dipped in dark chocolate as well, which makes them a little bit naughty. And there's a little bit of crystallized ginger that I sort of stamp into the top while they're setting. So they're actually quite delicious. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference with either of them that they're vegan. So.
Yeah, after you mentioned the vegan tahini banana bread, I was like, oh wow, I gotta start baking. It just sounds so delicious, and like ginger and the turmeric cookies. Oh my gosh, my mouth is watering. But that's incredible. Really, really great stories. Speaking of storytelling, can you tell us more about your storytelling with international female founders and creators? You talked to a couple different female leaders out there on Marmalade and Kindness.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one part of the website that I just absolutely love. So for me, it was really important to use this as a bit of a platform and a project to just empower other women. There are so many amazing female founders and creators out there. So I've developed an interview series called In the Kitchen With. And really it's sort of building a community of female leaders, female creators, and every week we share about 1 to 2 interviews, and every interviewee answers the same sort of set of prompts. And I've been so lucky that all these amazing women have just been so generous with their time and like willing to share a bit of a glimpse into their sort of daily routines and activities. And they all answer the same 10 prompts, and it kind of ranges from like my cooking inspiration to favorite random act of kindness. So it's really interesting to hear how all these prompts like create different responses in people. And actually, to mark World Entrepreneur Day this last week, actually, I took a few moments to like look back on some of the past interviews and do a little bit of an article on like the top 5 routines of female founders. So yeah, definitely check that one out. It's really cool.
Yeah, that sounds great. Again, you're able to use your platform to share your story as well as connect with other females out there, which is great. That's really important to share those unique stories, and it's really cool too that you're able to provide key takeaways from those interviews as well. For our listeners on the Daily Grind, where can we find the In the Kitchen interviews?
Yeah, so they are all up on the website. So the Marmalade and Kindness website is www.marmaladeandkindness.com. So they are all up there. Also on our Instagram, same Instagram handle, so at Marmalade and Kindness. So yeah, really cool. And I mean, as I say, I love it because I really do believe that, we need to be lifting other people up. I do really think it's so important to celebrate everyone's moments, really, and just be, a living example of that kindness, and to just share in some of that. So yeah, I love it. I really do love that interview series.
Wonderful. That's great. Speaking of sharing and celebrating, so we have coming up pretty soon, we have World Values Day on October 15th. How is Marmalade and Kindness celebrating this special day?
Oh, I'm so excited for this. So this is our first sort of major event series. So on the 15th of October, to mark World Values Day, I'm hosting two online events. They are both on Instagram Live. So the first is an interview with values-based coach Melanie Weeks, she's Australian. We're going to explore a little bit about how to introduce values-based living to children. And then in the afternoon UK time, I'm hosting an online mindful cooking workshop for children. And I'm co hosting that with Adi Farmani. She's an LA based nutritionist. So it's going to be really cool. It's going to be a really busy 24 hours. It's so awesome because Instagram, you can save all the videos so people can watch it at their own time too. But yeah, I'm really excited to get children involved, get them thinking about values in their everyday life. Yeah.
Really exciting. Yeah, we'll put information on the World Values Day as long as the Marmalade and Kindness website, how to find it on the online as well as the Instagram in today's show notes. Yeah, you mentioned that's really great with getting children involved, getting started at such a young age. I think that's really important. Just to kind of learn while you're young. And you even mentioned earlier in the interview, that's how you got your passion for cooking. So
Yeah.
yeah, you mentioned mindful cooking as well earlier in the interview. What are your thoughts on mindful cooking?
Yeah. So look, I mean, I don't know if you practice yoga regularly or if you have your own sort of meditation or mindfulness practice, but I've definitely found that sort of over the years, all of those tools have been just so useful for me, particularly, working in sort of corporate life as well. I've always found that there is so much pressure to be goal orientated, to perform, to always get to the next step. So these practices really balance that and really make you sort of see the big picture. But one of the things that I don't know, I noticed other people might also feel the same way, but it can be so easy to sort of fall off the wagon a little bit. You get a few busy weeks, and then hey, all of a sudden you miss that yoga class, you've forgotten to do that meditation, and you're kind of like, oh, where am I now? But with the mindful cooking, everyone has to make time. It doesn't matter how busy you are, you do have to make time to nourish yourself. And one of the things I really love about mindfulness is that the approach is so flexible, and you really can find those moments of presence in your daily activities as a bit of an informal mindfulness practice. And I think that through the cooking we really can cultivate an awareness of that here and now. Cooking is just so deeply immersive. I think of sort of mindfulness and getting in touch with the senses. I mean, there's cooking, like there's just really nothing like it. I mean, the smell, yeah, even just cooking fresh ingredients, thinking we're coming into fall now, so like that smell of fresh pumpkin when you cut into it, or the texture of like potting peas, and they're sort of so velvety on the inside, and the colors. So there's just so much to pay attention to. I mean, even the sounds, frying bacon, like it's unmistakable, right? And so with the cooking, just following a recipe, or even just doing something that you kind of know how to do and using your instinct, you really can get into that zone so fast. And it's almost like doing an active meditation and getting those sort of pesky thoughts in your head a little quieter. And I do find, when I start cooking, I don't know, things tend to soften a little bit. And then afterwards, you go back to doing what you were doing, and you do feel a little bit calmer, a little more present, a bit more grounded in your body. So yeah, mindful cooking really is that. It's taking that daily practice of preparing meals, and just extending those benefits.
Yes, I think that's really important. Again, I do yoga in the mornings every day. I just started it a few months ago. I feel really refreshed. I feel like with mindful
Yeah.
cooking, it even finds even a better balance as well. Just being able to incorporate that into your own daily practice and reap those benefits. So yeah, speaking of benefits, can you share the benefits of mindful cooking, especially during this time of COVID when we're still limited to stay at home for the most part?
Yeah.
the importance of self-care, impact on sustainability, things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that often we can see cooking as a bit of a chore. Pre-COVID particularly, it was, the thing you'd come home after a very long and busy day and probably a really long commute as well, and think, oh, what am I going to make or what am I going to do? Um, so we don't often think of cooking as an activity to help alleviate stress. But I think when we actually pause and stop and we treat cooking like an informal mindfulness practice, there are a lot of benefits that we can experience. And as I say, because eating is something that we all do and it's such a great connector. I mean, it is immediately accessible to us. It's a very accessible way to bring your whole self to a task, to focus on being in the moment. And I think you have that opportunity to sort of move away from some of those distracting thoughts, start developing some feelings of control and mastery. And in that way, cooking can actually help support some of that, stress management. You do become sort of rooted in the moment. Some of those worries do start to sort of melt away. And when I think of some of the other benefits, like managing strong emotions, as I was saying before, the senses are really deeply connected to our memories. And this is why, when we make a meal that we associate with love or with safety, it helps us to access some of those emotions and some of those feelings, in our present environment, which, I think is so important, particularly now with COVID. I mean, I've been cooking a lot of recipes that give me that sense of comfort or familiarity. Because I know that this can't just what my body needs. I know it has not only a physical impact, but also a mental aspect to it too. And one of the big things is just accessing that opportunity for creativity, experimenting with flavor combinations, adjusting things so that, it suits your own tastes. This is the thing with recipes. I mean, we develop it, but we all have such complicated and diverse palates. And that's okay. That should be celebrated. I mean, I think being resourceful as well with the ingredients that we have, paying attention to the presentation of food, like all of these aspects that we kind of just take for granted, but we can use them to build confidence. We can use them to develop new skills, take some risks. I think this willingness to experiment with some of these new projects, particularly with COVID, if we've got a little bit more time, it's just such a wonderful opportunity to just have a go and then take that confidence and take it into other areas of your life. And I think as well, create connection, through the sharing of meals, particularly within our family units. It's such a beautiful way to come together and, turn this time into a loving time, I think.
Really well said, Ada. Yeah, as she mentioned on this podcast, lots of benefits that we can, reap doing mindful cooking. I think it's really important. Again, being able to access that opportunity, experiment with creativity, lots of great key takeaways that you provide for us on the daily grind for our listeners out there. And I really enjoyed that last one too. You mentioned creating that connection, and then also the skills that you've learned from cooking, or having that positive mindset, or what you've felt in the kitchen. You can apply that to your own daily grind outside the kitchen, which is really important. And I would say I'm a person that has reaped those benefits as well, just seeing where I felt comfortable in the kitchen or overcoming creating those different combinations and being able to have that confidence to do other things in the world. So I think that's really important. Really well said. So yeah, Ada, what are some ways listeners can get started on mindful cooking?
Yeah, absolutely. There are three kind of tips I kind of like because they're so easy. They're quick, they're easy, and anyone can kind of do them just sort of straight away. So before you start, your cooking, what I like to do, it's a little bit like yoga, but just set an intention. And that might be something you quietly kind of just have in your head. It might be something you write down in your journal, but just have an intention, before you come to that experience of cooking. And I find doing that, it gives me a sense of, where my energy's at, what my mood is like, what I want to get out of, the next hour or 30 minutes. And it lets me have a little bit of a think about, well, who am I cooking for? What are the seasons? How can I repurpose this recipe? Is there an intention or a value that I can bring to this? And it might be sustainability, for example. It might be thinking about, well, how do I want to feel after I've made this meal? How do I want to share it? Or, it might just be simply, I just want to appreciate the produce that, I've bought and that I'm using. So I think number one, definitely just set an intention. And it's just something that, something private that you've kind of got in your mind. The second one is definitely getting in tune with your senses. So important. I think to be in the moment, we need to build our awareness of our feelings, really be curious about them. And I think after a busy day, even if we're at home, it does let us use all of our senses, check in with our breath. So when we're sitting there and we're preparing the ingredients and chopping things, just noticing, like, where am I holding my tension? Like, why am I recruiting my shoulders, to chop this onion? My shoulders probably don't need to be involved. Things around like the quality of the breath, what you can hear, what even you're telling yourself as you cook, what is your inner narrative? Like, are you sort of cooking with love, or is there this sort of criticism or judgment that's sort of coming in as you're doing something? And I think having that those observations around what is going on in our minds, but also what is going on around us, really gives us that space to just observe. Observe those reactions to everyday events. One great example is this is kind of like if you've ever burnt something or you've forgotten about it and you've kind of left it in the oven for too long. It's sort of that inner narrative of like, what do you tell yourself, in those moments? Do you say, oh, I'm so silly, why have I done that? Or, do you kind of just laugh it off and get on with it? So I think all of those reactions actually really, really interesting. And the third one is building in a bit of a reflection process, because, all of this, we can kind of be in the moment, but I think we do need to allow ourselves a space to reflect, to let those lessons shine through. Where can we see some of the areas that need our attention? And to do that, I keep a journal. Other people might have gratitude journals, or they might use the 5-minute journal, but just trying to include in your sort of regular journaling practice some observations. What was it like, your cooking experience? Is there something that's inspired you about the seasons, or a particular food that you've cooked with, or a recipe that you've been excited to try? And even just observations around how eating a particular thing has made you feel, on your mood, on your digestion. And if strong memories, for example, have been awakened during the cooking process, noting them down, because it's not always going to be positive. As I was saying, recreating some of the dishes that I used to make, with my grandmother, and that she used to make, they did bring back feelings of grief, feelings of sadness as well. And it's surprising sometimes what comes up. So not to shy away from that. I think being curious about that whole ambit of human emotion that can be triggered. So yeah, I think definitely set an intention, be aware of your senses, and then keep a journal or keep some notes about it.
Really well said. These are great, Ada. 3 easy tips that our listeners can get started on mindful cooking. I'm excited. I know everyone else listening to the podcast is, and really well said. And just how to again create that connection with cooking and being able to observe your reactions. A lot of great key takeaways in today's episode. Really, really important, really unique, and I'm glad to have you on the pod today. So, yeah, Ada, we talked about your daily schedule. What's on your daily grind in the upcoming months later this year?
Yeah, so I think apart from getting ready for World Values Day, I'm really just trying to focus on creating some space for myself. I've definitely found this year has been a crazy roller coaster ride, I'm sure, for everyone. So having that space, I think if we can get it to just explore a little bit, learn, take the time to read some books that we've been gathering dust on the shelves for a little while, and just be guided by my curiosity a little bit, and have that space to kind of just delve into that. So I'm quite lucky. I've set aside the next sort of 6 weeks to really just make a bit of time for me, and enjoy just the changing of the seasons. I don't know about you, but I love this shift from summer to fall. It is just so beautiful, all the colors, the trees. I mean, it just feels so alive. And we've actually just moved from London to Oxford. So I'm finding it so nourishing and actually renewing to be out of the city and closer to nature. So I'm very excited to just immerse myself in that sort of transition over the next 6 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, really exciting. Congrats on your move. And I really enjoy the season changes as well this time of year, soaking as much out in the outdoors as possible. So, which is wonderful. Ada, speaking of inspiration, do you have a word today to motivate our listeners out there?
Yeah. So I love this quote. So even if I knew that tomorrow the world would go to pieces, I would still plant my apple tree. I love that. So that statement is attributed to Martin Luther, and I've been thinking about it quite a bit actually, because we've now got a gorgeous backyard and there's this apple tree, and we've been picking some apples. But I was sort of thinking about the whole symbolism behind apples, but the quote, it just fills me with so much hope. That idea of even if everything would fall apart, I would still take that action to build an apple tree, to grow something for the future. And I think that spirit of just regeneration in nature, but also the resilience of the human spirit, particularly as we're facing so many critical challenges at the moment. I mean, as we've sort of said, COVID, climate change hasn't gone away. We definitely need to be thinking about sustainability and improving our food system, as we kind of highlighted with some of the trends that are happening around plant-based diets. So it is a reminder that we can continue to work with hope in our hearts, despite the difficulties and all the challenges that we see out there around us.
Really well said. I think it fits perfect with today's episode with Ada on the podcast. A really beautiful quote. Last but not least, can you remind our listeners where to find Marmalade and Kindness, and if they have questions, comments, want to follow you, things of that, how can they do so after the podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely love having a chat with anyone, and I absolutely welcome people to get in touch, whether it's through the social media channels or through the website. So the website again is www.marmaladeandkindness.com. Instagram channel is the same, so at Marmalade and Kindness. So please feel free to reach out. Please feel free to DM me if there's anything you want to ask about this show, or about mindful cooking, or just about anything in general. I do really love chatting to new people. So yeah, love to hear from anyone.
Great, wonderful. We'll put Ada's contact info, where to find Marmalade and Kindness, in today's show notes, as always. Thanks again for tuning in today's episode. A big thank you to Ada for being on the podcast.
Hey Daily Grinders, we have an Instagram contest with Savvy Dating Game for the month of October. Head over to @DailyGrindPod to enter and win a Savvy Dating Game prize pack and Target gift card. Let's give a quick shout out to our Daily Grinders listening to us on the pod or have been grinding with us since season 1. Feel free to check out our journey so far and share your feedback with us. Give us a rating and quick review on Apple. Virtual high five to you in advance. To find the Daily Grind, follow us on Instagram @DailyGrindPod and on Twitter as well.
Check out our website at www.kjfwi.org.
Daily Grind Pod, official podcast of the Kelly Johnson Foundation.
Until next time, my name is Kelly Johnson. Have a great day.